Hello there. Recently at Wine Searcher, several of the articles we've posted about value for money wines coming from Bordeaux have highlighted the wines of Denis Durantou, most particularly Château L'Église-Clinet, his Côte de Bordeaux Castillon, but also Lalande de Pomerol, Château Cruzel, as being some of the top value for money offers currently coming out of Bordeaux. So I thought it would be a good time to look at some of his other properties. So this is a wine called Saintayme, and this is a Saint Emilion Grand Cru from the 2020 vintage. Now I should make it clear that sometimes, in some markets, this wine is labelled as Saintme, spelt finishing A-Y-M-E, as opposed to just finishing E-M, like this particular bottling. Evidently this is the same wine. I'm not sure what the reason behind that is, but whichever the spelling, evidently it is a name, a shortening, a nickname for the Saint Emilion appellation. Denis Durantou, the producer whose name is on the bottle here, became famous in the 1980s and 1990s for building up the reputation of his family's property L'Église-Clinet to a level where it was ranked amongst the top wines from the appellation of Pomerol. Unfortunately, Durantou died in May of 2020, so didn't take a part of vinifying this particular wine. But the winemaking for his properties is now overseen by his daughter, Noémie. As well as being famous for having turned around the fortunes of L'Église-Clinet, Durantou is also well known for having sought out estates like this in less glamorous appellations and found wonderful terroirs for the growing of largely Merlot-based wines, because he specialised in working with Merlot. He believed in getting good ripeness from concentrated fruit, and there's a fair degree of opulence in these wines. Durantou purchased this property in 1985. It was a 9-hectare block of vineyards all on one site, with very typical soils for quality Saint Emilion, with a clay and limestone soil with an amount of gravel in the soil. The estate is slightly on the periphery of Saint Emilion, in a commune called Saint lease, but there are other quite well-known estates there, principal amongst which is Château Valandro, but also Château Fleur Cardinal. The vineyard here is almost entirely planted with Merlot, although there's a tiny amount of Cabernet Franc. The commune of Saint-Étienne-de-Lys tends to be a little cooler than some of the rest of Saint Emilion. The vines are described as having an average age of 35 years, which will mean they'll have reached their full root extension and should be producing wonderful concentrated fruit. The vines here are planted at 6,000 plants to the hectare, which is relatively close planted, although not as close as you might get in vineyards on the Medoc. This wine itself is 100% Merlot. My assumption is the fruit will have been hand-picked. Now, all the wines bearing the Denis Durantou name are vinified by the same team who make all the properties, including L'Église-Clinet. Their approach is to vinify plot by plot, so I would assume this is the case. The wine is vinified in small, open stainless steel fermenters. For extraction, I should imagine there are pump overs and possibly also punch downs with the open top fermenters. That would be possible. Slightly unusually for Saint Emilion, the approach here is to do the malolactic conversion in a tank. Evidently their belief is that you get more control over both fermentations and malolactic conversions actually in stainless steel tanks rather than in barrel. A lot of Saint Emilion producers will do the malolactic conversion in barrel, which just helps to integrate the oak notes into the fruit a little more quickly. So fermentation would have gone on with temperature control to stop the ferment from getting too hot. After fermentation, the wine was racked into French oak barriques. A portion, about a third, 30%, would have been new, and the wine stayed aging there for 14 months. Now 2020 was a lovely harvest. There was a mild winter. There was quite a wet period during the spring, but thankfully that gave the soils plenty of water, so that when there was actually quite a warm, dry summer, the vines were able to withstand the arid conditions. And so there's some lovely, rich, concentrated fruit. So let's have a look at this here and see how we go. Swirling it here, the wine's label says it has 14.5% alcohol, and this is a deep, dark, virtually opaque, concentrated wine. It's quite a black red, There isn't a purple note at the rim, it's much more of a sort of a dark red. So yeah, black ruby. As I swirl it there, it's forming copious tears on the side of the glass. Let's have a look at the aromas then, shall we? The aromas are rich, ripe, dark, almost chocolatey. There's a real intensity there. Concentrated aromas are of dark fruit, starting with a dark red plum through to that black plum, sort of the dams and the bullets, that sort of end of the spectrum there. And there are just hints of spice from the oak on the top notes there. So let's have a taste. The wine is mouth-filling, it's rich, it's smooth. There's quite a fine tannic grip there, quite grainy. You've got a dark plum fruit that very quickly becomes concentrated into a sort of a black, sweet licorice at first, and then almost bitter licorice. And with that licoriceiness, there are notes of cedar. There are some quite exotic sweet spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, almost hints of ginger. The acidity doesn't seem particularly high. This is not a delicate, elegant, perfumed Saint Emilion. This is rich. There's an almost earthy, chocolatey, brooding concentration there. But there's some quite nice oak spices coming through there. And there's enough freshness to leave the finish feeling quite sort of juicy, almost like sort of dark, very ripe red cherry. And again, the fruit is very ripe. I mean, it's 14.5% alcohol. Clearly very ripe fruit, but it's not got to a stage where it's tasting raisined or prune-like. You know, this is at a stage where it still just has a touch of freshness. And that freshness you can see on the finish there, because it's got lovely fresh acidity, which is giving it quite nice length. For a wine that is not particularly expensive, while I wouldn't say that this was a typical elegant perfumed Saint Emilion, certainly it's a wine that has good concentration, it has lovely balance. It's a wine that I think will probably be best to come back to in 4 or 5 years' time once that fruit's opened up, because it's very concentrated on the palate. I mean, it's showing very attractively now, but it has more to give, and I think it's a wine that very happily live for 10 years, probably longer. So yes, if you're looking for a wine from Bordeaux that's going to give you great value for money, certainly good bang for your buck, this would be a wine that's well worth considering. It's not hugely expensive. I mean, I should say that they only produce about 3,000 cases a year, so although it is widely distributed, it's not a wine you'll see a lot of in the shops. So thank you so much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed the tasting. If you have, do please press the like button. If you'd like to watch more of the videos, it would be great if you'd subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see your support, but that way you could also set yourself an alert and you can be prompted every time we post a new video. If you have any comments, please pop those in the comments box below. And if you have any friends you think might like to watch the video, please feel free to forward it to them. We'd really appreciate that sort of endorsement from you. I will leave a link in the notes below to the Wine Searcher page for this vintage of this wine, so you can follow that and you can see if and where it is stocked near you and what the price is. And then on the tabs on that page there's a lot more further information about the region, about the producer, about the grape varieties, any details we have on the winemaking. We have the critics' reaction to the wine. There are awards it's won, there are user reviews, there's price history. Hopefully there's everything you should need to make an informed buying decision about this wine there. So thank you so much for joining us, and I do hope you'll find some time and come and join us again in the near future for another tasting. Thanks again. Bye for now.